afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. If you are joining us live, just type in live in the comments. Woo! Let us know. We are super excited to welcome Vanessa Wari. She is incredible. We've had so many conversations, and Vanessa's like here to share her story, share what she's up to. She's a Black transgender advocate, activist, speaker, writer, all the things. And we're just super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and the work that you're up to. And I'd love to just have you start off with like your own introduction and your story and who you are and how this came to be that you've created.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for having me. A little bit about me. I am currently an MSW PhD at UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs in their social welfare department. As such, my interests lie in really looking at how we uplift the experience of people who don't necessarily make it to these spaces, such as academic spaces, definitely looking at how we uplift the lived experience to be as equally valued in matters of social justice and social welfare, as much as we give to sort of academic knowledge that is produced. I'm someone who has my journey informed by my own lived experience. So I grew up, I'm originally from the Bay Area, San Francisco and Oakland. I'm a former system-involved youth, so I was in foster care in my teens, having run away from home, seeking safety, found myself emancipated at 18, and the statistic in San Francisco was 1 in 3 foster youth will become homeless upon emancipation. That was definitely my experience. And, I sort of just felt like the people whose job it was to provide these social services and support for me as a young person, they didn't hold me like they were supposed to. And there was a lot that fell through. And I just had this sense at 18 years old that, someone is going to come after me in the exact same situation as me. And, I have an ability to enter this work and advocate and use my experiences to inform the enhancement of services, to advocate for more services that didn't exist yet. Because if I didn't, then somebody else was going to be dropped like I was. And that was sort of my guiding motto, as I went through my own professional journey, working with foster youth and emancipated foster youth, to working with LGBTQ youth more broadly, and then onto the trans community generally. It was really just that using my own experience to inform and to support the community work. And 13 years later, here I am, still doing it, still a happy community servant, using my experiences and using any positions or any experience that I have to lend myself to this greater liberation movement that we have. And now I'm in school because I have found throughout my experience that people who look like us, people who are Black, people who are brown, people who are trans, queer, like people who are undocumented, Indigenous, like we are never really invited to the table in a meaningful way about active conversations about our lives. Yeah. We often use degrees and these sort of class-based distinctions to separate who we listen to, mm-hmm. and who we don't, who we allow to share, their feelings and their sort of this subjectiveness to your lived experience versus this rigorous academic research that we sort of prize over, these more qualitative experiences that we hear from the people on the ground who are actively living and actively surviving against white supremacy and racism and racial injustice in this country. And really seeing the disconnect and really wondering how might we answer the same questions that we have been asking time and time again? How might we look at those same questions and find new ways to produce knowledge, find new ways of looking at them, find new solutions to problems that have existed for generations? How can we do that? By bringing in the people. And so, that's what brings me to my work currently, figuring out a way to develop innovative social interventions that bring people together regardless of, educational experience or professional experience, and really uplifting them, for surviving and thriving in a world that has criminalized their existence and made it so difficult for them to, just even be at the table. And that's something that really drives the work that I do today.
That's amazing. It always, that noise is me. I'm always blown away by, as you said, how we'll have somebody come and they've written a book about this population, and I'm like, what? Like, so?
You're not in the population.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, so I love how you've seen that, because there are also a lot of activists who say, like, hey, my lived experience is enough, and it is. And you really recognize that going to school and having those degrees and actually sitting at that table is going to make a difference too. Really just kind of pulling up a chair, literally. And it's, and it's interesting because we talk a lot about asking the same questions over and over and over again. And if you think about where the foster care system was in the 80s versus the 90s, it's like, again, it's another space of incremental change.
Yes.
And it just makes no sense. It makes no sense because people who have been part of the system, you just have and I have many friends who you just have a simple conversation. They're like, they should blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you don't get paid enough for them to listen to you. So, it's like, you actually know what's needed for real.
Yeah, who better to guide the future of developing services for the people and alleviating human suffering than the people who have for generations been suffering the most, right? To your point, you mentioned incremental change. I feel like, what has happened is a lot of us settle for this incremental change, right? We're like, what we have to do, we have to accept this because, it's in stages and we'll build. And we're like, but you do realize that the gap in terms of need keeps increasing with this incremental change. And so whatever it is that you've implemented, the need is always going to be over that. You see, houses being bought up and developed for community members, but it takes so long that by the time the house is open, there's double the need in terms of people who need that. And so it's just, it's really hard. And so also too, like for people who, have been advocating for years, organizing in communities, showing up to public comment within local government, meeting with folks in academia to try to, really advocate the need for our voices to have more amplification. It is about being able to be at the table and have access to degrees. And it's also this need to say that to highlight the ways in which degrees sort of also gatekeep who gets to be in these conversations and who gets to be at the table. I mean, I am the first Black trans woman who's an MSW PhD in my program. While that's amazing and I'm honored to hold that space, it's also something that we should address. Why is that the case? And through my existence in this space, I hope to bring this up. It's not only my academic project to achieve my degrees, but it's also deeply political for me to be in this space and hold these identities, because we're really highlighting how we have not been at the table. You look at social services and you see the trajectory leading back to academia, right? Like data, knowledge is produced, it informs policy, it informs practice, and it informs social norms overall. But if at the root, if in academic knowledge, the people's voices are not loud and clear, not only loud and clear, but authentic and accurate, and not, a lot is lost when you try to translate the community voice into the academic voice, right? And so if you don't have the true voice of the people, well, a lot is going to be lost in the end result. And we end up paying the price for that as the people out in this social structure we're in.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting because we talk about asking, like maybe we're not asking the right questions, and in hearing you, I'm like, maybe we're just not asking the right people the questions. You know, it's like we keep getting the same results over and over again, expecting a different result. It's like we could actually just ask the right people the same question.
Yeah. Or listen, to the people that have been saying things for generations, but because they don't have degrees, because they don't have these types of capital that we require for folks to listen, we dismiss them in favor of people who have these certain credentials or these class-based distinctions, and and not generally blanketing it to everybody, right? Because there are amazing people at the academy that are doing the work, but the question is, what might we do better? What more could we do if we bring the people together in a meaningful way and not create these barriers? So that's also something I'm really interested in looking at through research projects of my own, and also looking at the empowerment aspect of bringing together marginally oppressed communities to engage in these conversations. What does it look like to produce community-centered knowledge? How do they, involved in this process, increase their own sense of self-efficacy, feel empowered, and then what might they be inspired to do from engaging in a project like that?
Yes. I love this because I think we talk about listening like a lot in our group, right? And how we listen, and we have a day called Listening Tuesday, and we invite BIPOC to share, and like everybody just listens, and there's different lenses and filters that we listen through, and I think like what you're really like pointing to is like we have as a society and a culture a lens of listening to like a certain type of person as the expert. And this is what it is. Like, it's like you have a degree, you have a master's, maybe you look a certain way, maybe not. But like, what I love about this is that, like, really the question is like, what are we missing out on by just being like stuck in this box of who we listen to, right? And like, what happens when we decide, and maybe like I think most people like aren't even aware that we have this filter where it's like, oh, if you don't have this, I'm not listening to you.
If you're wearing
right, like people, they don't have that. And like, what's really exciting to me is like, okay, when we start to listen actually to like the marginalized and oppressed communities, like one, what have we not been hearing all this time, right? And like, what's the impact of that? And then what also are the possibilities that we get an awareness of, and like can actually bring forth by having more voices at the table, right? And like, there's just like so much. It's like there's so much going on, but we think that we're in this place of like all these great ideas, and like, what I think about like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and what is his name, Mark Zuckerberg, right? All those like the titans of industry. Like, there's something in common, right? There's something in common with all those people. And then like, and if this is what, like, if that's like good, right? By just having like, these titans of industry, whatever, if that's good, imagine what could be possible if we had people who didn't look like them.
Yeah.
Express themselves like that, like with their gender, like if we had more, like what could be possible, right?
Exactly.
It's like we have results, and maybe we're just like
close.
Yeah, like we're just at the lid, right? Like we're at this like thing where we're like, oh, we're at the top of the mountain, but what we can't see, we don't know what we don't know, right? Like we can't see that there's something that is way bigger available, but we cut ourselves off because we've decided like, oh, You want to be like a industry tycoon or like whatever, or academic, like you got to be a straight white male.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point that I would like to highlight. This has all been said. We often forget that the society we live in is a construction.
Yes.
All of the things that we uplift and uphold and quite frankly just go over a lot of our heads. Like if you don't have the lens with which to identify, it will go over your head, and it's understandable because for centuries now, right? Let's say that for centuries, we have lived as if these are normal and objective and universal and everywhere and natural. That you, like you said, I'm not going to listen to a particular voice unless they have, because knowledge is produced by people who look like this, who have these credentials, who move this way, who are in these spaces. And we don't question who constructed it that way. We don't question who is saying what about who, from what positions, and why. And I think that if we just bring those questions into our daily lives as a practice, that would change so much about how we see the world that we're embedded within. There is a reason why certain voices aren't invited to the table. There is a reason why we have a culture of preferring some voices over others, but it's not helping us progress. It's keeping us stagnant, and especially where we're at in our world today, where we're trying to grapple with our history as a country rooted in white supremacy and racism and phobias and all types of isms and difference. Yeah. These are exactly the questions that we need to be having, and that's what makes it so hard to see where the line ends between like being problematic and not.
It's, oh my gosh. So I just want to share with you that so you have a few people who are also trans joining us today. And one person said, I was a foster kid, also trans, also was in a Baptist children's home as well as state foster care. Totally from my whole heart agree with engaging the people with lived experience. Listen, those of you who are watching who have a shared lived experience, just like step out, speak out, like, like it makes
definitely
such a difference. And what I'm really interested in when I think about the listening, because I imagine this room of sort of like the suits who decide on foster care and kids who were in foster care coming together. And I'm so interested in how do you create a listening for the suits that's not like, oh, these are like specimens to examine. Oh, you know what I mean? Sort of that like, or like, oh, these are the ones we're helping. It's like, no, like these are peers, these are colleagues.
Yes.
I think you're just doing that literally just by being you and what you're doing. It's like there's something, I've worked with people on the continent of Africa for a really long time, and they would come to academic professional conferences and people would be like, wow, this study's really interesting. And I would just casually be like, yeah, they're doing that in Kenya. And they're like, what? Like, it's like, yeah, so they have science and they have kids and they have, And so it's just so, it's like disruptive in a way, and in such a great way. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I am of a position where I say that like the future is community-led, driven, and produced.
Yes.
And in fact, I believe it is necessary for the future to be community-led, driven, and produced. And to your question about how do we get the suits to sort of value the contributions, not as subjects, but as colleagues. That's definitely my academic question as well, just because it's not like communities have not existed for generations as capable of articulating their own needs and then organizing themselves on pennies and less to meet those needs. And in social welfare land, we often say that these communities, these people are resilient, and we use the word resilient, and we throw around resiliency very easy, as sort of like this standard of what constitutes being able to function in our society. And, we sort of leave it at resiliency, but we forget that, or maybe we just fail to acknowledge that, like, it's not really resilience, it's more like survival. People don't have a choice, right? But you say, oh, well, how are you trying to strengthen your resiliency? And it's like, well, I don't have a choice, ma'am. Like, I am Black in a white supremacist country. I am trans in a cis hetero society. Like, I do not have a choice but to survive. And, I feel like resiliency is often thrown out there as a way for us not to have to grapple with the fact that people are just thrown into this other category and not even given a second shot. And yet they are still here surviving. Yet they are still here doing it. How are we not looking at them as experts in their own lives?
It is.
It seems like common sense.
It's not that common.
It's really not.
My New Hampshire dad would tell you, common sense is not that common.
Common sense is not that common at all. And so, I think that it's what gets me fired up. It's what brings me so much passion about being in the space that I'm in, because this is the fight that I'm willing to have. We all have our calling that drives us to do particular aspects of the work. The work does not look like one thing. It is many different lanes. And so for me to be in a space where I'm in an academic institution, the only person of my identity, going up against people who have studied my communities for years and been uplifted as the experts in things that they have only read about and learned about in classroom discussions, to now come and say, well, here, I'm going to shake everything up. It's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Like, we need to begin to shift our thinking towards the future, which is what I think that this group is doing really, really well, and being intentional about holding space, because we're trying to build a better future world, right?
Yes, that works for everyone.
We are building a better future world. There's no doubt. Like, this is happening, right? This is like, it has to.
So I would love to hear from you. And I think especially if someone says, shake away, we need you. We need all of you. And I think that's just the thing, right? It's like, you grow up in this, you're 18 years old, you fully recognize that there are people who are going to come up behind me, and like, this should not be their experience. This doesn't work, And so I'm guessing that there are some days where this feels overwhelming, and this feels like, do I keep doing this? I mean, I'm just guessing this based on my own experience working in space of social change, but do you have those days? And what do you do about it?
Oh my God, I have those days every day. Like, can you imagine what it's like? I mean, like to have multiple marginalized identities, and, to experience the pressure of all of that, and then also simultaneously to be put in a position that not a lot of folks in my position have. I definitely recognize the privileges that I do have, and so, when we say, like, those who have the privilege also have the responsibility. And so when you're simultaneously dealing with, like, racism, transphobia, like sexism, like, and then also to feel this pressure of, like, well, if I don't do it, like, will it get done? Or I'm sure it will get done, like, but when? We don't know. Like, and the fact that at 18, I had this feeling like, to ignore that would be doing a disservice to my community, to my ancestors, to everything. Like, there was a reason why I felt the way I felt. And, I think that it's just one day at a time. I won't say, there's ups and downs. There's sometimes when it's easier to just do the work than other days. But yeah, absolutely. It's heavy, you know, we are creating a world for the future members of our society to not have to carry the burdens that we are carrying today. And so of course it's going to be heavy for us because there's not that many of us yet. And you know, to all the people joining us, like who are grounded in that lived experience, own that. You know, one thing I definitely feel a lot of in my program is the imposter syndrome, because I'm rooted in lived experience and community experience, and I'm in a space where that is not valued except for, you know, when we're conducting qualitative interviews on populations for $20, $40 incentives. You know, then that expertise is sort of valued and brought to the table, but not in any other capacity. So as someone who is rooted in that and grounded in that as a politic who comes into academic spaces, it can oftentimes feel, you know, like, oh, I don't belong here. What am I doing? I don't necessarily possess all of the academic language. But you know what? Your experience is valuable. You know what you're talking about. You do not feel what you have been through, right? I did not feel what I experienced in my life. I actually experienced that. I know tons of people who came before me and who came after me who have experienced the same thing. If you can see that commonality, that's knowledge right there. That is what community knowledge looks like. And community power, like stand in that and go into any space you're in. It doesn't necessarily have to be you moving in academic spaces or, you know, moving throughout the place where all the suits go to play, so to speak. You know, change happens on every level, micro, meso, macro, right? Wherever it is that you have the space, go in there and put your foot down and let them know, like, this is what you're missing. I said what I said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Is that what I said?
You know,
Yep.
and just for people who don't know, can you just contextualize a little bit, like what it's like having the intersectionality of all these identities in your experience, and just to give people an idea of, you know, like what it's like to be you and like what you're actually dealing with.
Yeah. So for, you know, to break it apart, like I am a Black trans woman, so I am dealing with, you know, anti-Blackness in America, racism in America, you know, and as you have seen, you know, with the protests that have been happening, the experiences with police brutality and you know, the death of and abuse of Black bodies at the hands of police and state-sanctioned violence, you know, seeing on a daily and really over the span of my life that the Black body is just seemingly so disposable to the United States, and having to carry that. You know, I was 11 years old when I had my first experience with like racism and you know, having a mother who was white passing and being in the same space with her, and having another white woman come up to me and ask me where my mother was. And after I pointed to this white woman, she was saying, like, that, stop lying, that's not your mother, right? So to experience these kinds of little microaggressions, micro invalidations, all the way through to knowing that my life could be taken just for the color of my skin is one problem. And to be denied access to and have to fight twice, 3 times, 4 times as hard to get less than half than what I deserve just for the color of my skin is just one bubble. You know, then you bring me being trans in a world that is cis normative, right? And values the cis body. You know, you look at the history of how we have sort of viewed trans folks, first viewing it as, like, you know, mental illness and being in the DSM-5, and now we've done things, we've removed it and we're moving forward, but still the harm has been caused, right? Like, we still tend to associate folks who are trans with some sort of cognitive impairment or you know, some sort of dysfunction, and you know, that is its own thing, to have to navigate society who is looking at you like you're crazy. Like, I try to go to the doctor, like if I, I'm having a fever, they want to ask if I've had surgery and if I'm on hormones and how long. And it's like, well, I just had a fever. What does that have to do with, like, I don't have a transgender fever. I just have a fever. Like, like, I am trans and it is an aspect of me, but like, when a friend of mine said, like, I don't wake up in a transgender bed. I don't have like pay transgender rent. Like, I am just a person who happens to be trans, but somehow, like, I have to be on the defensive and prove to the world that I am who I show up as. And then we're talking about like me being a woman. And so the way that womanhood and femininity is just so demonized in this country still. We're in the like cis heteropatriarchy. Like, so for me to be Black and trans, a Black woman, like a Black trans woman altogether, it means that I'm 3 times more likely than any person holding an individual one of these identities to experience a tough time in this country. And as a Black trans woman, I've grown up since I've been doing this work hearing that, Black trans women don't make it past 35. And I'm 30 right now. And if that's the case, then I've lived like 60+% of my life. And that's really disheartening to hear, and consistently year after year to hear it be the deadliest year on record for transgender women, and to see the list every Transgender Day of Remembrance, and they all look like me. I'm set to graduate my doctoral program shortly before my 35th birthday. And that's really crazy for me to have that association in my head, because nobody should have to grow up and just be casually carrying that with them. That adds to that heaviness that I think, Susan, you asked earlier, like, how do you do the work and carry it? Does it get heavy? Absolutely. I carry it with me every day, but I think that also serves as my fire, because I don't want the future Black trans girls who will absolutely exist, because we have always existed, to have to carry that with them.
Yeah, it's and thank you like for sharing that, because I really want to like make sure that everybody who watches this is gets the context, right, and gets the gravity of the reality that like anti-Blackness, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, all of it like there's an impact, and I think it's like the same kind of listening, right, where it comes from like, oh, we're only going to listen to like these certain kinds of people. And there's no real listening, I think, a lot of times when it comes to like what you're saying, like people and the experience, and like when you hear the words, transphobia and sexism and racism, there is an impact, like an actual impact. It's not just some like, like, ooh, up here idea that seems bad. Like there's real people who like it affects every aspect of your life, right? Like you come up, you're thinking like, I'm not gonna live past, like you're not supposed to live past 35. Like I go out in the street and like, just because of how I look, like the world hates me. And what I want to challenge people here with, as we always are, is this idea of what's normal and what have we like, and how has it been constructed, and what do we lose by staying in this construct that's so limiting and also so painful and detrimental to people, because we have decided that this normal is somehow better, or just better than anyone else there is to be. And I just love, right, like the expressions of like what it means to be human, right? Like what it means, like we have so much, like there's so much possibility and what it means to be human, and yet we cut ourselves off, and we live in a society that has decided and rewards you for cutting yourself off of like all these other expressions of humanity, and we think that that's the top. Like we think that that's all there is. Like what? Like I feel like, and it's just like it's indoctrinated, right? It's like every aspect of our society is decided like, oh, you know what? Who you are is less than, doesn't matter, doesn't deserve, and like it has nothing to contribute.
Yeah. You know, you said it wonderfully. Like we have been indoctrinated, and that's another takeaway that I hope folks joining us, you know, take and really take some regular time to like grapple with that. Like pick one thing every day to grapple with. Like who constituted this, from what position, to what end. You know, when we're talking about transphobia, it's not actually a fear of trans people, right? It's a hatred, right? So we need to change our language. What role does language play in shaping our relationship with certain things? You know, we look at difference in this capacity as wrong, as if difference is not one of the most as if difference is not where beauty comes from, right? There is a beauty in difference. There is, you know, sort of like just this richness that makes us who we are because we are different, and we need to celebrate and highlight all of those things, all of those differences, because of the way they've been suppressed for generations. You know, but really, like you said, looking at us as humans, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a lot more that connects us than separates us. And I believe that it doesn't have to be either or. I believe that, you know, uplifting difference so that we can have these examples for future members to connect to, right, is valuable, and does not come at the cost of looking at our commonalities toward, you know, that we work together towards our collective movement for liberation. Because while we all have, you know, some may have different levels of privilege and power, but none of us are actually free.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Talk about
that's
that.
the thing. That's the thing. I tell people all the time, right? Like that's the thing. Like the thing that you might think that you're like free. You know,
you're free. You might have 6 figures and a nice car and all that, and you think my life is good and gravy, I made it, but you're not free. You're not free until all of us are free. None of us are free.
Yeah. It's so true. And you know, when you say different, you know, I like what comes to my mind is possibility. Like instead of being like, oh, that's so different, like we just have the connotation that it's negative, right? But like, what if instead it's just like, here's a possibility of what it could look like to be human.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying that language plays a huge role in shaping how we connect to things and how we think of things. Because like you said, we say different and all of a sudden it's like, oh, us versus them, like, you know, but no, like, just like there are many different colors of the rainbow, many different types of flowers, like difference is beautiful. Change your association with how you view difference, and it could change your lens for how you view the world. Growing up, they always used to throw out like, you know, oh, the cure to cancer is in the brain of a child that's currently not invested in from one of these like communities. Like, let's expand that, like, to exactly what we're talking about today. Like, while we're figuring out whose voices we're going to listen, whose experiences we're going to uplift, just think about how many social issues we could address, how many diseases we might cure if we move towards working together and focusing on the commonalities that bind us when it comes to creating a better world for ourselves, and changing our association with what it means to be different, to value difference. You know, like, it's rich. I think art, I think culture, I think music, like, there are so many things that are different, that are beautiful. And we are part of that as well, because we create that.
Yes. Yeah. We're creating all of it. All of this is created, right? It's just a matter of whether or not we're aware of like at the effect of or at the source of, right? And I think so many of us, we live our life at the effect, right? Like we're living our lives at the effect of racism and white supremacy in a society that has decided like this little box is better than any other little box. And if you're trying to get out of this little box, like, oh no, get the slap down, you know? That is a creation. And so what we're up to here, and like, thank you so much for being here, right? Like we're up to here is creating something new, right? Like creating a new paradigm where we don't have to fit in a box. Like let's get rid of the box.
The box, goodness. Don't you want to stretch a little? Like, you know, who can be creative from a box?
That feels good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a few things I keep glancing down because this is where all the comments are happening. So several people were like, yes, until all of us are free, none of us are free. Yes, yes, hashtag truth. And then a couple said you can't hear my applause, but it happened. It's amazing. And I just think I even just think about this conversation, right? And it's like, this is an amazing conversation and there's a lot to learn here. And I love that there are people who also everybody's dying at I don't have a transgender fever. That's also happening in the comments. But just this conversation, you could tune out of this conversation entirely, or you could be a part of it and literally be witness to people who are from the inside out improving the foster care system. That's such a huge issue in this country. Kids?
It makes no sense.
It's like, I don't understand why we don't invest in kids. Like, who do you think is going to be here later on? You're not.
How are we not investing in the future members of our world better than we have been?
Yeah, it's really
and when you say it like that, it really just makes zero sense because it's probably the same people who understand the principles of investment, right? Like ROI. You invest something now so that it can grow.
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, when it comes
exponentially,
exactly, when it comes to children, when it comes to our humanity, when it comes to social justice, we have decided,
incremental change.
Yeah. Or when it comes to foster children, we think we know it's best for them enough to remove them from their homes, enough to remove them from, their families. Not saying there are children who come from places where they need to be removed. But a lot of times children are also removed from the home because they don't meet a socially constructed idea of what family functioning looks like. And we say, you are not able to take care of this child. We will remove this child and make them a ward of the court, and we will drop the ball on them too.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a question. What gives you the strength? We might have addressed this a little bit, but it never hurts to do it again. What gives you the strength to keep on keeping on? Do you think of someone or something to get you through?
Yes, I love those questions. I am a daydreamer by nature, and I have always had my head in the clouds, so to speak, and thinking about the future. I'm in love with all things futuristic. The Jetsons was my favorite cartoon. I love thinking about the future, and I think that is what keeps me going. I am thinking about the possibilities for a world after I'm gone, and I imagine them being beautiful, right? I imagine a world in which, our kids, our future generations have more than we have ever had, and that pushes me to show up daily to do the work, because I realize I am not recreating the wheel. I'm not creating anything that hasn't been done already, and I won't be the person necessarily to end anything, but I will create tools that the future generation will come along and build upon. as half of it. Now, currently, I look at the work of my elders, right? And on the flip side of that, I see myself as positioned between that, building upon the work of my elders who, from Stonewall and throwing bricks and fighting police and to opening their homes to provide spaces for girls and pushing back furniture to create cots on the floor to now having their own agencies, and being and having the funds to be able to implement their visions in this time that we're in, and to be able to sit underneath some of my elders and to watch them, people who grew up before I was born with no idea that we would be at this place in 2021, and to now have access to be able to do that creating and to see how they light up with joy as they see their visions implemented and see their work coming to life. And also, sharing it with me, as someone who will be taking up a mantelpiece of sorts afterwards to build upon their work and their legacy, and knowing that I'm just taking my place in this long chain of movement workers until hopefully we've eradicated human suffering, we've eradicated white supremacy, we've eradicated racism, and we truly get to this future that I think I've spent all my life envisioning. And I think that that's really what gets me through every day.
Amazing. So I have a question. You've had a lot of amazing answers, but I don't know if you're going to have a good answer to this one. Why not you? Why not in this lifetime?
Why not in this lifetime?
Why not you?
There is absolutely no reason why not in this lifetime. There is absolutely no reason why not.
Yeah.
I think that it is a lot of work. But I've always welcomed challenge, and I challenge everybody joining, and I challenge everybody in the world to make this happen. When I connected with you and you said in our lifetime, I was like, yes. And why haven't I like led myself with that? And that's something that I even have learned from this conversation and being in space with you to take away. Be ambitious, be bold, yes, in our lifetime, because we need that. It is a lot of tough conversations, but I think spaces like this is what it's for. And this is what I mean. The future is community led and developed. Y'all have created a platform to bring our people together to have these conversations and to start thinking about things. But the real work begins outside of spaces like this, at the individual level, especially for people who have never had to critique or grapple with or problematize. It needs to become daily practice. It needs to be done with intention, with mindfulness. But there is no reason why we can't.
There's no reason. No reason. It's funny. Like, I have a coach that I talk to, and he was like, why not set big goals? And like he said, like, and the reason, like, because people, like, we tend to want to set little ones
so we can achieve them.
And here's the
Specific,
thing:
measurable, attainable, realistic in time.
Yeah, right. Because we think like, we'll achieve them, but we'll miss them too, right? Like, we'll set the small goals and not achieve those. So like, it actually takes
the same amount.
It's the same amount. So like, let's go big. Like, like, that's what we're here for. Like, we're going for it. Why? Because we said so. And like, it can stop right now. Like, we don't have to continue this generation of like struggle and like dealing with white supremacy. Because you know what? Racism was created by like a person who had this idea, who wrote some stuff down,
smarter than us,
and people like went along with it. So let's create something new, and like, we'll write it down and talk about it. Get some people to go along with it.
Standardize it. And that's, if anything that I've learned from the years that I've been in school, is that's exactly what happened. It was a bunch of people who sat around and said, I think this. Yeah, okay, this is what it is. And then it became standardized as knowledge, and they conquered the world and said, this is what it is. And then, centuries later, here we are, right? And we're grappling with it. And I think that's another important thing to highlight in this conversation is, for folks who are wondering what they can do, or folks who are like, is this possible? you have to allow yourself to you have to allow yourself the grace, and you have to allow yourself the breathing room to understand that it's been so long that this has been standardized as normal. It has been constructed, standardized as normal. Our parents were socialized by their parents, who were socialized by their parents, who grew up to socialize their children, who are now socializing their children, just passing this torch to seem as if it were normal and unquestioning. And so now that we live in a world where we're like, well, hey, what if we question it? It can seem scary, but if there's one thing that I have taken away from my journey, to look at those uncomfortable moments and those moments of discomfort as opportunities, not only for growth, but to intentionally look at it as a sign that you are on a path of growth and change. Like you are where you are supposed to be in your journey, and push through it. Don't stay there, and don't pull away from it, but push through that discomfort, because on the other side is exactly what we all need and want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't
So
I love it. I just love it. So there's so many parallels, even in my meditation this morning, I do this breathwork meditation, and it's push through, and you just push through, and then it's something else available, opens up.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's just it's so true. Right? And we get uncomfortable, and we think oh, I want to pull away.
Go back. Yeah.
Right?
It's counterintuitive, right? Push through run towards danger. What?
Yeah. And then we look at what are we really afraid of? When we're uncomfortable, what is it really that it is? And at first, on the surface level, we think oh, it's the thing, right? It's I've been told being gay is wrong, or black people are dangerous, and all the stuff, and then but when you look at it, it's are you really afraid of that? Is that really what it is?
Yeah.
Or is it something else?
Yeah. Are you actually afraid, or do you fear retaliate? Do you fear that you might find yourself on the other side of that invisible glass? Mm-hmm. And that's real, but that is a question to ask. And if you do feel like you fear being on the other side of that wall or that glass, why?
Yeah.
And the answer that you give yourself to that question will give you everything that you need to know and why you need to be a part of this movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it doesn't need to be this way.
No, it's just a decision too, right? So I'm looking down again at this. What was I gonna say? So we do have people who are joining us who are also trans, who are also in the foster care system. Can they reach out to you? Can they connect with you? Can y'all?
Goodness, please. Find me on Facebook, Vanessa Wari. Find me on Instagram, Miss Warri, Warri. I would love to connect with you all. Yeah, we exist, as you see, and you don't know until you create these spaces for us to come together.
Isn't it wild? It's all along, and it's been. This group was started in the days following the murder of George Floyd, and literally I saw artwork that said white people do something, and I was like, okay. It's not going to be perfect, but it's
and it doesn't have to be. You'll figure it out along the way. You are figuring it out, and you are trying. You are showing up.
Yeah, I was there's something to consistency. Mm-hmm. There's something to persistence. And there's an entire community of people that when they just meet each other, beautiful things can happen. And if we just create this space and you all get to come together and we all get to come together and work together, and we see that the trans rights journey fight is no different than the gay rights fight, is no different than that. It's just not. And it's all thing. It really is. And and I love talking with people like you who are we can make exponential change. We don't need to be it was a little better for 10% of the kids according to the survey that they filled out for a $20 gift card. No, that's all some nonsense. And it just is we can just flip the whole system on its head. So Oh.
Yeah, Monica says, the moment I met another mom of a trans kid, I felt a part of something normal.
So interesting.
It's my heart. That's so beautiful.
You can just redefine it. That's how that goes.
Yeah.
We construct it. We are living in a construction.
And it doesn't take so much, right? Like you, Monica, just meeting another mom, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not the only one.
Yep.
The only one. My experience is not an anomaly. It's actually probably more common than I think, and I won't know unless I come into the collective and see who else is in the room.
Yeah, and those of you who, who are reaching, Mariko says yes. Those of you who resonate and are interested in what Vanessa's up to, for sure reach out, for sure connect. And listen, you don't have to be trans or part of the foster system. It's not required. You just have to listen to people who are. That's it. That's the invitation. Just listen for real, and listen in the way that you do on Listening Tuesday, and listen, and really, really listen and really get it and get that experience. And so all good. Oh, people are saying goosebumps. Yeah. It's just, it makes such a huge difference. And it's like, we never know, right? We show up in a group with 40,000 plus people. Things get shared outside the group because that's the nature of the group by design. And sometimes just a couple weeks or a month later, someone will say, you guys said that one thing and it's had me thinking for the last month, or you said that one thing and I realized this. It's like, you just don't know.
You just don't know. Impact is impact.
Yeah.
Whether it's changing 100 lives or changing one life, impact is impact. And you don't know what the ripple effect of that will be.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, it's so amazing. Well, we'll have to get you more connected with the Exponential Human Project community. So we run a course based off of this. We started this group. We thought, we'll sign petitions and make phone calls. And we were like, oh, no. We're going to have to elevate humanity. Okay, that's going to take some more. Okay. Give us a few months. We'll create a course. So we did, and we have this beautiful community, the Exponential Human Project. And I think just having examples of people making exponential change and committed to that exponential change, and who are answering the question of why not in my lifetime with there is no good reason. Like that's, those of you who are in the whatever the program's called, EHP program, isn't it just becoming more and more real for you the more you hear it? It's like, it's just becoming more and more real. So and from different people.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
We'll just keep talking.
Yeah. We the people, literally. People power. We the people. So if we say some things need to change, we can change some things. It's not about asking permission. It's
Permission.
No, it's not a permission, it's a directive. It's
this is all of our world.
It's not, we the people are asking if we could please have a few more breadcrumbs.
No. We demand, if enough of us actually came together, we can halt and change, as you've seen when unfortunately, I wish it didn't take death and violence to bring folks together. I wish folks could come together even outside of this, when we're not, in anger, but we are more focused in action. And if we could come out more consistently, when George Floyd was murdered and everyone came out in droves for days, there was a moment where I was like, oh, is this it? Are we about to come to a moment where we're because the people were out every single day in droves. And I was like, okay, so what organizing is going to happen now? And are people going to take this same energy and focus it up and actually make our demands, right? Because the world don't move without us. It's individual actors. It doesn't move without us.
Right. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, that's why we're still here showing up and growing the community, because it is easy for this stuff to ebb and flow. It really is. It's going to take a tidal wave, not this ebb and flow nonsense, you know?
Yeah.
So,
We don't have time for incrementalism anymore.
no.
We don't. There are too many things. Global warming on top of everything else. On top of everything else, we don't have time for incremental change.
Time for it. That's like the thing that's always in like my head. I'm always talking about this. I'm like,
I hate wasting
people,
time. I know.
like, can we just address this now? Because we gotta like actually save the
Be
planet.
able to collaborate.
Right? Like we actually like, can we just come together like on this whole like racism issue like now? Because we on a time crunch. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Earth will be here. Earth will be here. Whether we are here is all dependent on us and us working together. Now, if you haven't heard that today, let me bring that to the table. Earth will be here.
Want to work together. Like it's like I've led a lot of like group training initiatives, like to build teamwork, you know, and it's like it takes a little while and people, but there's so many of them where it's like, oh, we just all have to work together and then we all win. Got it, you know? So it's like it's just so interesting. So Charlotte says it's time for a paradigm shift.
Yep.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Well, it is
this is so
2:01.
good.
This is amazing.
This is so-
Vanessa, yeah, I know. See, time flew by.
We're always like 45 minutes-ish, and we're like, well, and then so awesome. Vanessa, don't go anywhere. We're gonna say goodbye to our friends on Facebook. Thank you all for being here.
Vanessa, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're gonna keep talking for a moment.
And if you all are catching the replay on this, make sure you type in #replay and make sure check out and follow Vanessa on Instagram and on Facebook and connect with her. Like she's open to it. So yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Person changing the world. All right. Thanks, everyone. Oh, sorry. Okay, hang on. It's still live, probably. So I put my hand up so I can see when my. Okay.
On my end, it says that the Facebook live thing, that it is recording. I don't know.
Let's see. Okay, there we go. There we go.
All
There it is.
done.
Well, they loved it. That was so great. I'm like really excited for the otare trans foster people, because they're not kids, formerly
Foster folks.
who are there. I mean, I don't know. I know nothing about them. I literally don't know who they are, but I'm just imagining that seeing you doing what you're up to in the world, maybe just change the trajectory of someone's life, you know?
You know, that's all I could ever hope. Again, I don't know the impact of this hour that I've just spent with you, but we, you know, it's for the better. We are better off having these conversations than not.
Mm-hmm.
As I was talking, I was thinking, because this Exponential Human Project is really exciting and it's growing exponentially, but I do feel like it would be very cool to be like, here are some people in our community who are committed to exponential impact. They're not okay with the status quo. Here's how I don't know, I'm making this up as I say it, but you know what I mean? Just having more proximity to more people who believe in exponential impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also, though, can't remember what it's called.
And
but
the people who are doing it, we created a new way of being, an exponentialist.
An exponentialist.
Mm-hmm. People who are committed to this, like no more status quo, and we want to go.
Yeah.
Exponentialist.
When I say shake it up,
Yeah.
I mean it.
Doing a little two-step.
Yes.
I know. So I've just come across them. I know nothing about them, but I feel like they might be people that you should maybe connect with. Binti, BINTI, and they're reinventing child welfare. They're disrupting the child welfare industry. They're a new startup. It's a software company, actually. But they have like 80% more families approved per year, 16% fewer days to approve families, 20 to 40% saving social worker time. And it was launched with the County of San Francisco in 2016.
Interesting. What are they called again?
Binti, BINTI.
Okay.
It's literally just software for child welfare agencies, you know.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's binti.com. And I don't know, I have this idea that like they're in the same part of the country as you, that they would potentially be really interested in talking with somebody who's been in the space. And I think like actually has lived experience. And I'm thinking about, and they have different looking people, which is good.
To start, not all like white men, which is great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking about, for, you know, that what we consider success, like the way in which we measure foster care success is broken, right? Because it's like, ooh, we placed all the kids. It's like, okay, why have kids you have to place in the first place?
Right.
Like, how do you know, like, what do you, and to your point about, you know, I remember we used to live in this building and there was this daycare system in our building. It was basically an auntie who had like, I don't know, like 15 kids in her one apartment all day, every day. And it's like, child welfare would have shut that down so fast. And it's like, those kids were happy. They were fed.
fine.
They were fine.
Yeah.
They were like running in the hallways, doing their thing. Like, and she was like the auntie.
Why?
Yes. And it's like, again, if child welfare had seen that, it would have been like, and then you have like the actual bad actors in the child care welfare system, you know, and they get away with it because they know their way around the system. And anyway, don't even get me started.
It's a lot of work. It's an ambitious ticket, but we got it.
Yeah, I just feel like if we need to really start gathering people who are committed to exponential impact. And prior to this and in my real life, I'm the founder of the Global Autism Project, and we train people to work with kids with autism all over the world. And we're now starting to, with the pandemic, what we're doing is really just building a bigger and bigger and bigger community. So more autistic self-advocates, more international partners, more, you know, and I just think that if we can just get more people thinking along the lines of, in my lifetime, bold, you know, just big, bold goals, I think is, this is what I think about in my free time.
Talk about.
It's what we talk about all the time. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So this is amazing. And I hope if you ever come east, you look us up. And
She's east now.
I'm in Queens right now.
Oh, I thought you were in the Bay Area.
I am originally from the Bay. I live in Los Angeles, but I'm here at one of my community elders' homes for spring break. She's also like my aunt, so just here getting away from home for a little bit.
Oh, that's nice.
That's awesome.
We've
That's
been
really good.
in our house.
All the food.
All the food. Please eat all the food.
That's amazing. I think this was really good. I think it really made a difference for people. And, you know, it's funny because I used to have a trans staff member, and I also had like white girls from Alabama working for me. And it was just like, you know, and they'd meet Shay and they didn't know that he was trans. And then eventually they'd kind of find out, you know, and they were like, oh, it's like they just had no, like literally the only trans person they ever met. And now they're like, no, she's my friend. It's like, yeah. And, you know, and it's just like, I just think it's so important to have more people have proximity to each other.
Yeah, definitely change people's normals. That was definitely like my politic in undergrad. You know, when I got to UCLA campus for the first time and noticed that there was nobody that looked like me, you know, it was like, well, I'm actually kind of changing these kids' normal. These Gen Zers and late millennials probably have never shared space like this with someone who looks like me, and to have nerve to be in the, you know, #1 public institution in the country and to be raising my hand and contributing in discussion and in these breakout rooms, and they've never had that before, so it shifts their normal, which is really important because now none of them can say they've never shared this kind of space with a trans person before. And, you know, if they never knew that a trans person could be academically inclined or that a Black trans woman could be academically inclined, now you know.
Now you know. Now you know. Thank you. If you didn't know, now you know.
Love it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Vanessa,
Well,
I'm saving your number on my phone.
Please do. Please do. And if we need to have a round two, let me know. We could do that too.
I know.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, we're not in New York. We're in New Hampshire. People think we're in New York and we let them think it because there's,
When we first started this group, we were
Not
like, we don't know
jobs.
who's in it.
we still don't know who's in it.
Yeah.
Not jobs. We live in a small town where it's easy to find us. So we just pretend we still live in New York, but
Love it.
so we're going to have to like come out,
Stay here.
like say we, yeah, we'll just rent this apartment for filming. No. Nope. We're going to say goodbye to the New Hampshire apartment, but
Why
Yeah.
does this light go on and off?
because that's how it's supposed to.
No, it's not. It's supposed to stay on and then go off for hours.
Oh, well, instead this is our garden. That's our kale and our,
I love it. I was just saying I loved it.
listen, we didn't know if this damn world was going to end.
Gotta be prepared. Listen, I love as a guilty pleasure, like I love like the movies about dystopian futures and post-apocalyptic worlds. So I love this idea of like getting ready for it. You just don't know, so you gotta be ready.
Wait, do you like Star Trek?
Love Star Trek, yeah.
Have you watched Discovery?
No, I haven't yet. I haven't because I'm in school.
It's so good, especially this last season. It's so good. It's so, you have to do all of it. Watch it.
You just listed my next binge watch. My next on the list to binge watch.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, it's so good. You'll love it. You'll love it.
It's amazing.
All right. Well, we'll let you go back to your auntie.
I know, I guess probably.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This has been an amazing conversation. And yeah, just thank you for holding space and uplifting my voice and story. And then just thank you for doing this. Like, yes, the future is more of this all the time and everywhere.
We need to do it, especially because I just read that Donald Trump is coming back to social media and he owns the platform, apparently.
Heard that, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah,
I guess that's what I get. I should have learned from when I heard he was president and thought it was a joke that.
I know. Or when you heard he was running and thought it was a joke.
And then he was like winning and I thought it was a joke. And then the news said he won and I thought it was a joke. So I should really get out the habit of thinking this man is joking when he talks.
Listen, Donald Trump tells you exactly who he is. And if you're dumb enough not to care.
He sounds, yeah, well, I appreciate that because I know to stay like all the way away from you. Like, I appreciate that kind of like, hey, because I know to keep away from you. And also, yeah, exactly what you said. We need more. We need double, triple the amount of community.
Exponentialist. Yeah.
Exponentialist. Like we gotta make it so that like I don't know when he's launching.
There's like just too many people engaged with our platforms to even bother. Like
Exactly. Pay him any mind.
Yeah, and be like, what is this nonsense? No.
No.
Yeah.
No. He's got rabid fans too. So. Well,
okay, ladies.
To meet you. Thank you for your time. We so
absolutely.
I know it made a difference for folks, so thank you.
Good. You all have a wonderful rest of your day. Keep up the good work and reach out to me if we can collaborate further on it.
Yeah, we're going to.
For sure.
We're working on a little something.
All right, Vanessa. Take care.
Bye.